action.
Hello, Mr. Vogt. This is our final presentation ever for the University Academy. We all shed a tear taking whatever you believe is religiously acceptable. And my name is Rita. I'm here with my partners, Matthew Fisher, TJ Norman, and Samuel Smith for this project of Bookly. Let us do the looking. Here is our trifold board containing all of the elements, and we're going to hop right into it with element A.
Okay, so element A is defining the problem. When we started to look into Bookly and what we wanted to make in an app, we noticed that around the world that there was a certain problem within the book finding community, and that books were often not reviewed in the ways that we would want to review them. So for instance, something that we really wanted to make was a book reviewing app that would take into account different archetypes, characters, and genres while considering books to give to a person, which is why we decided to make Bookly. Now,
Yes,
Samuel,
that is why we decided to make Bookly. I'm so glad that you brought that point up, Tejas. So that brings us to element B, which is B for beautiful. Beautiful in the way that other solutions of today really don't meet the same standard that we hold for ourselves. We looked to try to find something that could really create book recommendations like what we were wanting to do, that like say, okay, this is what you have read, this is what you've liked about it, this is what you haven't liked about it, and compile all of that data to find books that are as much similar to those or books that they would like compared to what those things were. So we were looking at, okay, what are the things and current methods and actions that people have been using? Well, obviously you can ask your friend, like, hey, do you have any book recommendations? These are some things I like. But a lot of times people have different views of what they believe is enjoyable. So that's not always the most effective. And similarly, you have r/suggest me a book on Reddit and other different Reddit channels. And then you also have the Gutenberg Project, which is like a free book for book by genre. And you also have Goodreads, which gives just reviews on different things, but doesn't ever give you recommendations on what to read. And then you also have obviously Facebook groups, which are just different versions of Reddit and people giving answers, recommendations to each other. So yeah, that's pretty much what the solutions so far are.
So that brings us over to element C, which is basically just us kind of putting together what our solution is supposed to look like. So we made a survey on surveymonkey.com, and we just basically posted it around and just to see what people would want from this new app. So we kind of compiled a list of these different things that we want. So first of all, we would want kind of stats for what each book does best, like what if a book is good at world building or character building, or if it has really interesting plot, stuff like that, so that it could rate from 1 to 5 on those aspects, and so we can sort by that in our new app. And then obviously we want to tag the group or the books based on different groups or categories. So if it's like a fantasy book or a sci-fi book. And then we also wanted to try to put a most viewed book. So like we would just see like what is the most viewed book of the day. And then we also have a book of the week. So just what people think is the best book that week. As for the app itself, we want to put a good GUI in it so that it looks nice, and then we need a book sorting algorithm so that so that people can find the books that they want. And then we have the big database of books, and we need to make it so that it's easy to add books as they go along. Instead of having to rewrite everything, you just add it modularly, new books on there with all their different categories. And then we also want to add links to sellers so that if someone finds a book that they like, then they don't have to directly buy it from Bookly per se. They can just instead buy it from Amazon or something, and we can put a link for each of the books like that.
All right. And Matthew flowed perfectly into element D, which is developing ideas. So element D, we all sat down and we had to brainstorm what we would prioritize in this project. And if we had to cut certain things out, what would those be? But first and most importantly was, let's cram as many things into this as we can for the time being. We'll trim down later. So we had what we wanted for the GUI, for book ratings, the library, book recommendations, database, an AI case that can grow case by case on new information, a polling system for when readers and users have increased their library, and then affiliate links for monetization. So if we were to take this to market, that would be how we would fund the entire Bookly project, would be through Amazon affiliate links, whether it be Audible or paperback books. And then from element E, how does this all include STEM?
So if we start with the S of STEM, we have science. And underneath science, I believe we can fit in computer science. Making this app was not an easy task. And Matthew did a pretty awesome job in working the GUI and creating what you see today.
Yes, he
For the
did.
T in technology, we have, well, the technology. So this app currently runs on our computers, and we're trying to make it work on our app store as well, but that's something that's still a work in progress. As for the E, we have our engineering. One application of STEM principles that we all used in our project was the design process, specifically the engineering design process. It helped us figure out the best path that we could take to reach our goal of making Bookly, and it really helped us maintain our time along the way. And finally, we have M for math. Underneath math, we have a predictive algorithm, which will help us determine how and when to provide books to people who would like to get them.
Yeah, so that leads perfectly into how are we going to review if we're actually successful in this, which is element F for review. So anyway, the design was really reviewed based on several different extra functional considerations, like how viable the design is, the capacity of the proposed solution to actually address the problem, and make sure that it's realistic and actually supported with evidence. So we come through different alternative solutions to the issue, and the biggest one that we actually looked at was Goodreads. We looked at their ability to sort of suggest books, but also mainly just provide reviews and lists of the best in a certain genre. But we also saw how much that we could actually improve upon their current software by actually providing people recommendations on what it was that they wanted to read. And knowing how they suggested new books based on certain things gave us kind of a roadmap of, okay, this is what we need to do to actually be able to suggest somebody a book and it actually be a great recommendation. The biggest problem right now is that people can't actually get book recommendations using current methods without texting multiple people, getting multiple second opinions, multiple back and forth conversations, which if you don't like social interaction, which is the majority of our client base, they really don't like that. That's really not enjoyable for them. So we want to solve that problem.
According to our poll.
Yes, and the data according to our poll was that people really love this app and they really hated human connection. So we decided to build something that really addressed both of those concerns. And the next thing we did was just making sure that we could solve those issues. First, we would create a AI algorithm that could be able to recommend people books based on what, like we would have a preconceived list of, okay, if they select these genres, and these genres, go to the top of the list on those types of books that have these certain themes or elements in them. And we would be able to do if-then statements to be able to say, hey, if it includes this, then show them this book. And then lastly, we wanted to be able to make sure that the app was used to solve all of the problems presented. And so we wanted to also include ratings so that if people wanted to see why they were recommended that book, to make sure that it actually was a good book so they could be backed up with readings. So anyway, the proposed solution that we've had has been going through multiple version controls. We've had brainstorming and we've had thought experiments to make sure to see if it would hold up. It did splendidly. And then also we went through multiple different design iterations that Matthew spearheaded.
Right, so that brings us over to element G, which is those design iterations that he talked about. So the very first iteration we went through was through a prototyping program called Envision App. And so it's not really app making software per se, it's more just like a prototyping of what an app should look like. And so you can see right there on the trifold, that's kind of what we made so far in that, so far in that app. So it has a home page, a favorites page, a search page, and a profile page. And so the buttons on each of the main pages work to basically switch between them. But because of the limitations of Envision App, we couldn't actually make a database or anything, so we couldn't build off of that. So then we had to move over to App Inventor, which is a little more difficult to make look nice because it's not really, it doesn't really have good enough functionality to look nice. So that's kind of just what the main page looks like. It looks a lot more ugly than what the actual original homepage was. And so with App Inventor, we were actually able to put together sort of a database and an actual search function. So basically, we put in just different different variables that had lists in them. So the one variable had a list of different things. And so anytime you would search up something that is in that list, it would bring up just the name of the book and display on the search page. And so that's basically how most search functions work. And so that's how it works on our app. And so we just compiled just testing it with 4 different books, and it worked perfectly fine. But sadly, that is as far as we were able to get with the app. So we were able to prove that it would work, and if we did have more time and more availability, then we could probably make a fully functioning, nice-looking app.
Okay, so that then slides right into element H, plan for testing and data collection. So what we did is we went back to the polling process and we tested Bookly with anonymous online polling. We shared out the files and we asked people, bearing in mind the current pandemic and that we are high school students on this project, what they thought of the idea and what we currently had and where it could go. So here is the poll. And then here is our data, which can also be analyzed. We also, when we were testing, we used family recommendations as well as our expert opinions. Get a bit later.
So when looking at the data that we got from our poll, a lot of the analysis that we had from it was just generally positive. Many people really liked the idea of an app that focused on archetypes and things that you wouldn't typically find in a book reviewing source. And so a lot of the feedback was extremely supportive. Some of the suggestions that we had were extremely helpful with the way we would lay out our GUI. But for the most part, I think people were interested, and the data supports that conclusion as well.
Yes, but we wanted to go further than just a bunch of random people online and what they thought of our app. We wanted to get our expert opinions, which is where Dr. Krishnan and Dr. Subnaranian, our expert authors, have had thorough reviews of our app, and they were all overwhelmingly positive. They had really great feedback. They said that it worked extremely well for the search function. And they loved our idea on being able to recommend people books based on what they read. And they said that the app showed definite promise. And then if we had more time and more resources and availability to create the algorithm, that they definitely would love it as well.
All right, and I believe, is that it?
We have our reflection. So looking back on this project, what was our impression?
So looking back on the project, I guess I'll start. I'd say that it was a bit of an ambitious idea because I mean, there are apps that would have like less functionality than this, but have like bigger development teams. So it was a bit ambitious, but I think we could have gotten something very solid out if it hadn't been for the whole quarantine situation. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, I thought the idea was really good when we kind of came together at first with our brain trusts. We all were thinking about things that we, really feel strongly about, things that we experience. And we came to the conclusion that it's hard to find a good book every time you want to find a new one. You go to Half Price Books, you're looking through the halls, nothing stands out to you. But like Matthew said, it certainly was ambitious. Keeping in mind a lot, we had restrictions on time, money, personnel, and knowledge of the subject. But in the end, we came out with a functioning project that was really, really cool to see what we could make, even in light of a pandemic.
Add on to what Reed said, I think something that if I had the opportunity to go back and change, or perhaps just even highlight, I really appreciated the process about creating a survey to get feedback on our idea. I felt like that was super helpful in helping create our project, because without that type of knowledge, we wouldn't exactly know if we're catering the right thing to the people that we want to give this to.
Mhm.
So I really appreciated that aspect of the project.
Yeah, and following on with what Tejas, Reed, and Matthew have said, I think just this whole project has been a really great, for me at least, making sure that whenever you're going to spend time to build something, making sure that it's not just something that you want to build, but that people are actually going to want. And the best way to do that is to actually go and ask people, hey, what do you want? That's the 3 secrets to success. Is first, go ask people what they want. Second, go get it. And then third, just give it to them. So we got first one done, second one almost done, and third one, well, we're here.
Getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. So anyway, I think this whole project was a lot of fun. We got to learn a whole lot about, I got to learn a lot about how to use different apps for development, especially like Envision app. I definitely see a lot of promise to use that. And if any of us want to build prototypes and apps in the long run, I think that's an amazing software to use. Matt also, his back's been hurting from carrying this entire team. But yeah, in all, I think that this project's been really awesome. And if I had to change anything about it, I say that setting more realistic expectations at first. I feel that we kind of went the, okay, everything goes approach, which doesn't always work in the long run. And I would also have loved to create a way to get started on AI a little bit sooner. Because that was a beast, and we did not realize how much of a beast it was. But we learned a whole lot about it and through the process, and I'm so glad that we had this experience to learn all of these skills to really be able to solve something with the engineering process.
Absolutely. And then lastly, element M, and that's presenting. What do you think we're doing? What do you think we're doing right now, Mr. Vogt? We're doing it. Joke's on you.
Yes. We are showing this to the world. You are the world. Mr. Vogt, no. You
Mr.
are
Vogt, you're our world.
You are our world, Mr. Vogt.
You are
You are our world.
Okay, guys, on
We
3.
are
Ready?
the
1,
world.
2, 3. You are our world.
You are our world.
You are my
Okay.
You are.
Okay, ready? On 3, guys. 1, 2, 3. You
You
are
are
my
our
world.
world.
You are our world. That's actually really hard to
I
say.
said my. I'm sorry.
I said you are our
I
world.
think the latency messes it up.
All right, ready? Third
Listen.
time's a charm.
No,
3,
no,
2, 1.
You are our world.
It was just Tejas. That's
I
fine.
love you, Mr. Vogt.
Mr. Vogt, this is an absolutely great way to end our last year ever here. But the
Is it?
memories will never die.
The
Matthew,
memories
I'm
will
trying to
not
be
die.
sentimental. Don't ruin this.
Reed, we haven't seen your face the entire slideshow.
You
can
saw
turn
me
your-
at the beginning.
Can we see it
That's
again?
fair.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Wonderful.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why I have large face syndrome.
Large face syndrome. Yep.
So cool fact, Mr. Vogt. I wanted to say thank you to all my PLTW teachers that I never got to thank before, because I now have a STEM job. I'm working under an architect part-time, and he is actually the former construction manager for UT Tyler, and he is responsible for RB and RBS. That was his project.
Dude, that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyways, Mr. Vogt, but I'm like firsthand seeing the application of so much of what I've learned in your class and in Miss oh my gosh, Miss Mabry's and
Mr.
Miss
Wilson,
Wilson,
Miss Georgiou,
and
Miss Mabry.
yeah, I said Miss Mabry. And
Okay.
last year we had Miss I'm so bad with names. I hate this is on recording, but Mr. Vogt, you're seeing the real me.
Lanchester. Miss Lanchester.
Yeah.
Anyway, all of those PLTW classes, I'm literally seeing application for it firsthand in a career field. So thank you so much. This is stuff I'm going to keep for my whole life. Not just the memories, but the lessons. And happy 2020.
Yeah, and also I'm really looking forward to using these STEM principles in my my real desire to pursue exotic dancing. I think that the ability.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the ability to
explain the
calculate-
science, technology, engineering, and math of that.
Yes. Okay. So
It's the
science.
math, the math.
Obviously, it's the science of attraction. Right. So you've got to have a specific.
Pheromones.
Yes, pheromones, exactly. So I do calculations as I'm spinning, how many pheromones are being created at this very moment, and what certain, like getting people, hooked up to IVs to, monitor their their numbers, to be able to see what things are the most actually enjoyable and back them up with data, which goes into technology. That's a pretty decent part of technology. But engineering, this is where it all comes together. Engineering
the most revealing clothes possible.
Exactly. Engineering the most revealing clothes possible, engineering the best possible routine, and engineering just an incredible experience for them. And mathematics, well, pi r squared.
What you talking about? Pi r circle, boy.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mr. Vogt.
Rotundness.
I hope you appreciated this. We enjoyed you so much through our past few years together. Sorry that we had kind of an anticlimactic ending, but we really enjoyed our time with you. So thank you so much. And on behalf of all of us, what do we want to say?
Wait.
Yes.
We ended your class like we started it. Confused and not sure what's about to happen.
That is very true. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for making us confused and not sure what's about to happen. All right, cool. Thank you so much, Mr. Vogt.
It's been wonderful.
I'll end this recording.
Bye, Mr. Vogt.
Bye.